The moment we lost the phone signal, I should have turned the car around. Something about that lonely stretch cut out by thickened trees set pinpricks of doubt crawling all over me. The sun was slipping away now, a fading ember, staining the earth with an orange glow as the tires of our car framed the border of an unmarked clearing. "Perfect spot," Jake said, grinning as he grabbed his backpack. He had always been the adventurous type. Me? Not so much. But I went along with him. As we set up camp, the trees watched over us, with crooked limbs clawing at the dim sky. An eerie stillness enveloped the area. Those woods seemed expectant and almost like they were holding their breath. We were almost through with getting everything situated when I saw it, a circle of rocks in the ground, an old, long-abandoned fireplace, but in its midst, not ashes, but bones. Little ones, white and clean, in a shape I couldn't identify. Maybe a hunter arranged them, Jake shrugged, but I could see in his face that he wasn't convinced. A shiver traveled down my backbone. I shoved at one of the bones with my boot. It was fragile, hollow. The quiet in the woods seemed deeper, weighing down my ears. The fire crackled, and in the pitch-black night, it cut the embers of itself. We sat on logs, munching on canned beans, and the unhappiness didn't go away. Around the campfire, it was silent. A single, deliberate footstep in the underbrush. Not an animal, too heavy. We couldn't move. Then another step. Closer. Jake clicked on his flashlight, his aim the trees. Nothing. Just in the middle were the solid little branches being moved gently. Probably a deer, he muttered, but his fingers cut into the handle's grip. We listened. Silence. Then, the third step. It was next to the tent. We roamed around the camp using our lights, no footprints, nothing seeming unfamiliar. But on our comeback, something felt different. The tent, the covering that was fully zipped, was now wide open. Inside, the sleeping bags had been moved, almost like someone had gone inside and stirred all things around. Did you leave it open?" I asked Jake. "No," he said. His voice was tight. We checked the whole perimeter, but the looming trees were just a mass of darkness. We had nosy neighbors. We agreed to use a horseshoe technique and take breaks when it was the other person's turn. Jake offered to keep the fire going awake first while I go to sleep. So I laid back on the ground inside my sleeping bag, feeling every possible sensation. It was dark outside the tent. I think I must have slept for a while because I woke up to a sound that scared me to death. Being slow, short, at a short distance. It wasn't Jake. He was still by the fire looking like a shadow. This was next to my tent, just inches from my head. I hardly breathed. My hand was nearly crushed when I gripped my pocket knife. The man continued to breathe, and I could hear him scratching. Morning had broken. Packing up was what we did. And as we started to move, I saw them. Muddy footprints. Human footprints. That someone made from the woods to the tent, and then around it. Again and again. My insides turned as heavy as lead. These were not ours. Not to mention that there were no footprints the night before either. Jake was drained of color. "Get up." Now was written all over his face. We made a stop by the car before leaving the place, the breath of our own mixed with the heat. The windows were all misted up as we left the place all of a sudden. We didn't say anything for miles. It was only at the main road when Jake finally broke the silence. "I looked at the traces," he said so softly. They did not start at the wood." I faced him, my body covered in cold sweat. It was behind the car. Crunching dry leaves outside our tent was the first sound I heard when I opened my eyes. Most of it was still dark, and the weird part was that no one in our group had even left the tent. They were all still asleep inside. It seemed like any other regular weekend when we left for our wilderness adventure. My friends and I, those who are Jake, Sarah, and Mike, went to a camp in the woods for one night. We were college seniors who wanted to have one last adventure before our graduation. We were going to have different careers, but to unite for a while before that. We picked a spot deep in the national forest, far from the typical trails, where we really could be away, not only from people, but technology too. The sun had just disappeared below the horizon as we started to set our camp up. The sharp light now threw long shadows between the huge pines. It was scary. The forest was like it was truly alive. You could hear it whisper with the rustle of leaves and the far-off chirps of unseen creatures. We made a fire, joking and telling stories like nothing else was happening in the world, while the flames were painting dancing shadows on our faces. When it was completely dark, the temperature dropped. The only warmth and the only light that we could get was from the fire. We were not talking, we just stayed there in a circle, holding the blanket, being protected from the snacks and beer that we were enjoying on the camping trip. The topic changed, and finally, we started telling each other ghost stories. It always occurs in a place like this, but still, there was an unsaid intensity in the air. The problem was not the fact that we created the stories, but the knowledge that the forest reacts to them. Around midnight, the wind came up and stirred the trees, which made a noise rather like voices at a distance. We decided it was time to go to bed. Moving into our tents, in the glades, the forest felt ominously still. Only occasionally did anything break the profound silence, the faint crack of a twig in the woods beyond, which I remembered laughing at, but that was so long ago, and never mind, I thought. Nevertheless, in the middle of the night, I suddenly woke. It wasn't a sound that roused me, it was a feeling that somebody was watching me. My heart thudded in my chest like a drum, and I lay there, motionless, listening. That's when I heard it, the slow, heavy footfalls of something moving back and forth through the dry leaves just outside our tent. I held my breath, trying to hear more. The steps went all the way around our tent and were slow and regular, indicating that whoever or whatever it was knew we were inside and wanted us to know they knew it. I whispered to Jake in the same tent, but he was in a deep sleep. I dared unlatch the tent door. After what seemed like forever, the steps disappeared into the woods. At last I let myself exhale, trying hard to believe it was probably just a deer. Deep inside me, however, I knew better. The next morning, I stood outside, expecting to see beast tracks or some other sign of what had forced brand new paths round about my sleep last night. But there were no indications of life at all. The others shrugged this off when I mentioned it to them. Maybe I'm just too impressed by spooky stories. We decided to pack it in and get an early start. But as we went back towards the main trail, something made my blood run cold. There, far from any confluence of paths, deep in a trail, were footprints. Fresh human footprints. But they were none of ours, bigger, unshod, and disappearing into the thick woods in a direction where we had not come from. It was then that we realized we were not the only ones responsible out there. Feeling panicked, we picked up speed. The farther into the woods we went, the more we sensed that we were being followed. Branches snapped behind us, and there were constantly shadows. It felt just outside our sight line. But every time we stopped to turn, there was nothing there. By the time we got back to the car, we were out of breath and jumpy. As we put our gear away, I glanced one final time at the tree line. Then I saw it, a figure, half hidden by a tree, which stood watching us. It was tall, still, and most definitely human. But something about the way it belied itself against the trunk was off. We didn't stop to find out more. Tensing, we shut the doors and sped off down the dirt road, not halting until we were miles away. None of us ever spoke of it again, but I know we all saw the same thing. And to this day I will never again go camping in those woods.